Join me as we embark on Black Culture Trek 2024, celebrating the profound influence of African American and Black culture in Paris, Brussels, and London from September 21st through 27th, 2024. Immerse yourself in rich history, savor exquisite cuisine, and explore hidden gems guided by local experts. This transformative journey promises a unique blend of culture, heritage, and self-discovery, offering an unparalleled opportunity to make history together. Don't miss out. Go to www.yourbestlifeabroad.com/Black Culture Trek registration to register now for an unforgettable experience. Now, on to the podcast. Hey, everybody. So I am so excited to be back with y'all for season 3 of Best Life Abroad, Not Your Average Travel Podcast. The podcast where we explore the ins and the outs of moving abroad and living your best life in a new country. So I am your host, Dr. Raquel, and I am thrilled to embark on this global journey with you. I'm so excited to be back with y'all again. So let's talk about season 3, okay? So you all have spoken. So many of you that I've talked to said that 2024 is going to be your year of moving abroad. And you have asked that I focus on giving you the real deal on what it really takes and what you really need to be out of this piece come 2024. Okay. So that's what we're talking about this season. How to make this thing that you've been dreaming about all these years a reality. Okay. So today, on the first episode of season 3, we are going to be delving in to the decision of moving abroad. So I personally believe that the biggest indicator of whether or not you will actually move abroad is how committed you are to the decision of moving abroad. Okay. And so I'll share a little bit about myself. So like many of you, I had the dream of moving abroad for many, many years. When I was dating my now husband, he already knew that, okay, bruh, you know that at some point my plan and my dream is to live full time outside of the United States. Okay. So I completely understand for those of you who are like, I really, really have this hope, this dream, this desire to live somewhere else, to be somewhere else, to be immersed somewhere else. Okay. And so, just going back a little bit to share my own story. I know that many of you who listened to season 1, you know that I initially lived abroad in Madrid, Spain, which is where I studied. And so, when I lived in Madrid, even though it was a horrible, terrible, no good, very bad experience for me, there were still lots of pieces of it that I was like, this is what I want. Okay. So the main thing for me too, even then, like as a college student, the main thing that stood out to me was this infamous work-life balance. It was like the first time I had ever experienced a place where people did not like put such a high emphasis on working in terms of like your life revolves around your work. I mean, the fact that there's a siesta should tell you that right there. Like you could try to go get something at a good 1 p.m. But I'm going to tell you now, 90% of the places will be closed. You know why? Because they don't care about what you need. What they care about is their own personal sanity and taking some time off to enjoy their family. Like if you were a college student, you went back home and you had lunch with your whole family every day. And so that I was like, what do you mean? It was mind blowing for me. And so, from that point on, I was like, I want so much of this, but I just feel like I need to find this somewhere else. And it was then that I made the decision, like, I want to live abroad. But I didn't even quite realize that that's what I was doing, like making that decision. So it was really something that was like this like vague thing that I knew I wanted to do. But I wasn't really all the way sure about how to make it happen. I just knew I really, really wanted it to happen. And so looking back, I can see for myself how every decision that I made aligned with that dream of going abroad. Okay, so I was an educator. I graduated on May 9th and I started teaching high school Spanish on May 10th. Okay, so I was an educator like immediately, literally the day after graduation. And so as an educator, I thought that maybe education might be my path to get me abroad. And so this was, before the time when informational conversations had a name, but I would just get my little calling card and I'd call around to different schools around the world. I would look and see if I can find a phone number of a person. And I would say, hey, so I just have a question for you. Like, if you were to hire an educator from the US, like what qualifications would you expect them to have? So that I knew what I needed in order to be able to get hired somewhere. And so from there, I decided to get my my second master's degree, because I had already had a master's in higher ed. And so I decided to get my second master's degree in teaching English to non-native speakers, also known as TESOL. And so, every decision that I made, even though I wasn't I had not written down like every decision I make is going to align with this dream of moving abroad, but it was kind of like instinctively, that's what I was doing. And so, I know many of you who are out there who I've talked to who are like, I have this dream. It's kind of like this distant thing, but I'm trying to make this tangible. And so how do I go about doing that? And so really leaning into that decision, like we are committing that it's going to be 2024. And so how do you go about doing that? And so that's what I want to talk about in this episode today. Let's talk about how do you move beyond the fear and then still lean into the decision that may be a little bit scary. Okay. So in terms of fear, that's that nagging emotion that can really be paralyzing. Okay. So we have all been there, paralyzed by the what ifs. I'm not sure. I'm afraid that, and just those unknowns. Okay. But really overcoming that fear is going to be a skill set that you want to start leaning into right now. You are going to have to overcome fear often in your life abroad. Okay, we're just going to be real about this. There are going to be many things that you do not know. It's a new culture, a new country, a new potentially language, a new way of doing things that you will not know. And so you will have to start flexing that muscle of being okay with the unknown and moving beyond fear. Okay, that's just period, full stop. You are going to have to learn to do that if you want to, one, get abroad, and two, be able to really lean into your life abroad. Okay, so let's first talk about fear of the unknown. Okay, so it is entirely normal for you to have some fear about what you don't know. You don't know it. You're moving to a new place. Okay, and specifically, this is a whole new country. So the unfamiliarity can be really overwhelming sometimes, and it can be intimidating. And so, I've shared this story before as well, but like when I studied in Spain, I could not figure out how to buy like fresh food in the grocery store. And so also these people were not trying to help me. So I had no choice but to figure out what I was going to do. What am I going to eat? And I'm not buying bocadillos every day. Okay. So I lived off of pasta. I got my little penne pasta. I got a can of corn, a can of carrots, and a can of tuna. And I would mix all that together and put some Italian dressing on top. That's what I lived off of every day while I lived in Spain. And that is real talk. And so for me, it was just really, it was too much trying to go every day, ask people who didn't really want to help me, like, what am I going to do? So I was like, okay, I'm going to figure out a solution that works for me. And that was my solution. And so there were many things that I just did not know, and I had to just figure it out. And so even though it might be something that can be really overwhelming or intimidating at times, those are the times where you will grow the most personally. Like, I have lived in places where there were things that were just like, this is beyond my scope of understanding. I don't understand this. And so what it helped me to do was really feel like, okay, either I'm going to just be a woe is me because I can't figure this out, or I'm going to figure out a solution that works for me anyway. So the resilience that I gained from being in those experiences, it like has stuck with me up until today. Like, I know that there are things that I know I would not feel as confident doing today, like as a parent. And it's all because of the things that I had to do and those unknown moments while being in a different country and a different culture that was not my own. Okay. So, one thing I also want to emphasize is that one of the best ways to overcome a lot of that unknown and that fear that comes with the unknown is information. So this is why at Best Life Abroad, we help you make your move abroad plan/roadmap. So this was really the key element that was so helpful for me in my move abroad. It is what helped me to stay sane through the foolery, because there will be foolery. So my goal is to help you understand all of the possible things that could come up, the possible barriers, the possible successes, so that you can have your roadmap. So when something happens, you're like, okay, I just have to get through this thing, figure out how to make that happen. So then we're moving on to the next step of this, making me even that much closer to making this dream a reality. Okay. There will be a time where you speak to some official somebody who says, these are all of the things that you need in order to get your visa. And you say, okay, bet. I will spend the next month collecting all of those documents before my appointment, which is in a month and a half. Then 2 weeks before, you're like, okay, I just want to double check. Let me call and make sure. So then you call and make sure. Now you're speaking to a different official somebody. And they say, I don't know why they told you that. These are the things that you actually need. And now you have 2 weeks to get all those other things. And you're like ready to punch somebody in the face. Okay. Or punch all the somebodies in the face. Obviously, you can't do that. And so these are the things that the roadmap was really what helped me to just stay grounded and sane through those moments, because I'm like, okay, I get this visa and then I can start the fun stuff. I can start figuring out where I'm going to live and what I'm going to do and like all the other things that I really was excited about. But I'm like, okay, this is what I need to do. This is what I need to get through. I remember when we were moving to Germany, I had all the things that on the government website said that we needed for our appointment. Okay. And it wasn't quite as easy then. I wouldn't say easy, but information wasn't quite as readily accessible then as it is now. This was only a few years after Google was popular. So Google was not the beast that it is today. It was not that then. Okay. So I remember like looking through just like any websites, any information that told me anything about like your visa appointment with Germany. And so the official websites had a list of the things that you needed. But for some reason, on all the unofficial websites, it was like, you need a copy of your bank statement to show that you have money in the bank. And I kept thinking to myself, but it doesn't say this on the official websites. Like these are the websites that looked like, okay, this cannot be real. Like some scammer created this website, but all of them kept saying that I needed my bank statement. And so I'm like, okay, I'm just going to print this thing off and take it with me. It does not say that we needed that, but I'm just going to bring it anyway. And so I remember going to the appointment, giving them all the things that the website needed. And then she was like, and we need to have your bank statement. And I said, what? Y'all do know on your website, it does not say a bank statement. And she was like, and what? So either you're going to give me this statement or you're not. And so I was like, wow, I'm so grateful that I actually did this, because I hadn't, like, if I just would have gone by what officially was supposed to happen, I wouldn't have had the information I needed. And so there are going to be times where you are going to need to pivot, and you're going to need to pivot quickly. It's like that hurry up and wait that people talk about. It can be a lot of that when you're going through the process of preparing and getting all the things that you need for your move abroad. But research is really going to be one of those things that helps you to feel more confident and more like, okay, I'm approaching this from a place of strength versus like it's all coming at me and then I'm having to constantly just react. So it helps you to feel a little bit more prepared instead of like you're just responding and reacting to all the things. Also, just researching where you're moving to. Okay, so learning about the culture, the language, the customs. The more you know, the less overwhelmed that you can feel. And so you will hear me say this now and forevermore, but you should always learn the language of the country that you're moving to as best as you can. Some people are like, I'm just not a language person. That's fine. You know how to say stuff in the grocery store. You know how to ask for the bathroom, things like that. And so you always want to try to lean into learning the language as much as you can. Okay. And then, as I mentioned, like with the other just random websites, you want to utilize all of the resources that you possibly can utilize when you are figuring out what you need. Okay. So that can be things like Facebook community websites, all of the expat communities that you can lean into for the country that you're moving to. You want to read all of the blog posts at www.yourbestlifeabroad.com/blog. There are all types of different blog posts that I have created for various aspects of your move abroad. So you just have information about all types of different things that you'll need to know about as you're planning your move abroad. So you want to use all of that information that is readily available for you so that you can absorb as much of that as possible. Okay, so you'll find that many people who have gone before you have had the same type of fears, the same type of experiences, but they were really able to overcome a lot of that through preparation. So the more you can be prepared, the better. Now, let's talk about a real fear that you really need to have a plan for, and that is a financial fear. So a lot of people that I speak to are like, I just don't know how much money I'm going to need to move abroad. And that is real. Okay. Moving abroad can be a significant investment. And so you really have to make sure that you plan this out. I have a blog post that I created, again, www.yourbestlifeabroad.com/blog, called Do You Need a Job Before Moving Abroad? The Pros and Cons to Winging It. Okay, so there I give you some tips on things that you should be thinking about in terms of your finances before you go. Okay, so the number one tip I will give you that will help you, again, overcome those fears, feel less overwhelmed, is creating a realistic budget. All right. Now, let's talk about realistic. Okay. If you have $5, your budget should be for $5. You hear? Don't try to create this $10 budget when you only have $5, because what that will make you feel is stressed out and overwhelmed. So you want to really seriously think about what your budget is, what you have to spend, what your needs are. Okay. Country comparison. So like comparing our cost of living calculators, those are so helpful. One of my favorites, I've shared it before, I will share it again, is Numbeo, Numbeo. Okay. That is one cost of living calculator that I love, because if you like a good libation, you can calculate that into your grocery bill. Okay. Things like that. You can get that granular if you like with Numbeo. And so figuring out what the cost of living actually is somewhere else versus what the cost of living is where you are now can be super helpful in you creating a realistic budget for yourself. Now, one of the things that I hear a lot of people say is like, I don't know if I can afford to move abroad. My question, because I'm always going to look on the other side of that, is can you afford not to? So I've talked to so many people that are like, I want to enroll my kids in different programs, in after school activities. You never know. I've talked to people who were like, I could not afford after school for my kids in the US, and my kids are in all the things now that we live in Mexico. Okay. So you don't know, maybe you cannot afford to live the life that you're living in the way that you want to, but you completely be able to do that if you moved abroad. Okay. But the first thing you have to do is figure out what are the real numbers that you're working with. And once you can figure that out, it takes away a lot of the stress of feeling like, I don't know if I can afford it. I'm not sure if I can. The best way to get rid of that anxiety is to figure out, can you afford it? What do you have? What maybe you're even able to get so much more from your money than you could if you stayed where you are, but you never know those things if you don't begin working on it and putting it into motion so that you have a better sense of what you're working with. Okay. And again, that's where that move abroad plan comes in. So once you have a financial plan that is realistic, it removes all of that anxiety because you have done the research. You have a real estimate of what those things are that you need. Okay. And just a little side tip. So whatever number that you come up with what you actually need, I would recommend adding an extra 5 to 10% bump onto that number. So there will always be a random festival, a beautiful string of sunny days where you want some gelato and a churro. Okay. And you do not want to have to miss out on those spur of the moment, amazing, once in a lifetime things because you didn't budget, because you don't have that extra money available for that. Okay. And so I remember when we first moved to Germany, I was like, is this another festival? Is this another holiday? Is this another? Yes, it was. It sure was. And you know where I was at all the festivals, at all the holidays, eating all the rotivers. Okay. Because you don't move abroad to then not experience life abroad. You move abroad in order to really immerse yourself in another culture. Okay. If you didn't want to do that, then you would stay where you are. So you really want to do your best, if possible, to give yourself a little wiggle room so that you don't have to be as strict and not able to enjoy the things that you moved abroad for. Okay. So one of the last things I want to talk about is talking about the fear of failure, which I've heard a lot more people say more recently than in the past. Okay. So this is that, what if it doesn't work out? What if I move to this place and I hate it? Those are all real questions to ask. And so it is okay to have these doubts. It is okay to have these questions. But one of the things that I think is most important to remember is not letting these doubts or these questions paralyze you. So I have found that this is one of the things that hinders people the most from moving from this is my dream and I'd love to be able to do this to actually making that dream a reality, is this fear of failure and this fear of it not working out in the way that you had hoped that it would. And so failure is a part of life. It is going to be a part of your life no matter where you are. But I have been there, done that, got the t-shirt of moving to a place that I absolutely hated. Okay. Every single day that I was there, I hated it. But the lessons that I learned and the way that I was able to grow from that experience was truly invaluable. Okay. And I really recommend that you look at your move abroad as a journey as opposed to a destination. Okay. You're not moving to a place and that's the end. We're moving and then, okay, now I can wrap this up. But you're moving and you are beginning a new phase of life. This is the beginning of a journey. It's not the end of it. And so I think if you also can remember that this is a work in progress. And so you move to a place, you absolutely hate it. That's not the end. It's not like you're stuck there and you have to stay there for the rest of your life. You move somewhere you don't like it, you can go somewhere else. And if you're in a new location, now you've already gone through the process. So you know what it takes to be able to move somewhere else. You might be able to go somewhere where it's even easier for you to get there because you're already out of the country. Okay. So you really want to think of this as kind of like it's a journey, a process, and one that you're always going to be along that process and not just like stifled in one place. And so, one of the things that I remember when I was living in the place that I hated is like I was so grounded in terms of my faith because I felt like it is me and you, me and my creator. That's it. And it was like a feeling that really helped me to be able to understand what it was that I believed, what it was that was important to me, what it was that I was prioritizing in my life. Also, even like, picking my battles. There were times that things happened and I was like, this is jacked up, but it's really not worth me fighting over this. And then there were other things and I was like, oh no, we're going to fight about this today because that is not okay. And so it helped me to find a voice to speak up for myself. And so oftentimes when you're thinking of moving abroad, personal growth and development is not something that you're trying to get. It's like you're trying to establish a different way of life for yourself. But it's honestly oftentimes a side effect of your move abroad. You're going to grow personally. You are going to notice things about yourself that you did not know that were there before. You're going to notice things about what you like, what you don't like, what you're comfortable with, what you're not comfortable with. All those things are going to present themselves while you are abroad. And so it's important just to, again, begin building that muscle of pushing yourself beyond that fear, beyond that unknown, beyond those doubts, because you are going to have to do that in your life abroad. Okay. And the decision to move abroad, it's a personal one. So fear is a natural part of that process. However, by facing your fears head on, by doing the research to make sure that you're making an informed decision, and by learning how to embrace the unknown, because you're always going to have something that's unknown, no matter where you are. You might think you know everything where you are, but you do not. Okay? We do not know anything that's going to happen to us tomorrow. And so you can really begin to be excited, have that plan, have that roadmap so that you feel more comfortable about what your next steps are and that you begin to be excited about this life that you're able to create. One of the reasons why I created Best Life Abroad is because I feel so strongly about people customizing and creating the life that is best for them. You do not have to live a life that somebody else told you have to live. It's just not a thing. The sooner that we all realize this, the happier and the more aligned in our purpose and joyful that we will all be. And so I really think that in terms of moving abroad, if it's something that has really been on your heart and your mind and your soul and your spirit for all this time, there's something that's holding you back. So figuring out what that is, what is it? Is it fear of something? Is it pressure? Is it kind of societal norms? Is it just insecurity? What are those things that are holding you back? And what are the things that can help you move beyond that? Okay. And so I hope that today's episode has really inspired you to take the leap if that's something that you decide to do. Conquering your fears, starting living your best life abroad. If this is something that you really want, it is completely feasible and possible for you. Okay. So just remember, like, there is a world out there that you haven't tapped into, and it is full of possibilities, and it's just waiting there. Like, hey, girl, come on over to the side because we're waiting for you. And I know that I would not be who I am. I would not have the perspectives that I have. I would not prioritizing exposing my children to so many different types of experiences if it were not for my decision to move abroad. And I'm going to tell you one more story and then I'll be quiet. So recently, like a few weeks ago, I asked my son, hey, where do you want to go for our next vacation? And the boy is 6. The boy says, Paris, nonchalant, no second thought, no, no qualms, no hesitations, Paris. And I'm like, who does that? What 6-year-old, when you ask him where he wants to go on vacation, says Paris? Who does that? And I'm so happy that he said that because it just made my heart soar that he's not like, Disney World, the beach. He's like, Paris. That's where I'm trying to go. And the global perspective that he has is completely because of the global perspective that my husband and I have. And I'm with it. So you know what we will be doing in September? going to Paris. And you know why? Because that's what my boy wants. Okay. So that's where we will be. And so, the things that I've been able to instill in my children, the way that, we talk to, he's learning German in school. But also like, my husband and my favorite language is Dutch. And so like, I'll like say things to him in Dutch. He has books in Dutch. And so he's like so excited right now to learn Dutch. And I'm like, what? This is amazing. I'm so excited that he'll be like, no, I'll read it. The boy does not know Dutch. Okay. But he's like so excited to read it and he reads it well. I was like, oh, your accent might be a little bit better than your mother's, although I'm not going to tell you that. But, the global perspective that he has on life, it just makes my heart so happy. And I remember like when living in these different places, like each place that I've lived in, it's been a different experience, a different feel for me. But, like living in Antwerp for me, like that's the place where every single day, like this is a place for my soul. And I didn't know this when I moved there, but when I moved there, I researched obviously the city prior to making the decision to move. But then I found that like at that time, New York was the number one most international city in the world, and Antwerp, Belgium was number two. And so I never thought I could live in Europe and just completely like be immersed as a Black woman in this culture. And so being able to offer that to my children has always been like, since that experience has always been something that I'm like, I want my children to understand how big the world is and how we are just like this little speck. So let's soak as much of this up as possible. And so, as much as I can help you to be able to have that experience for yourself, I'm absolutely so excited to do that. So thank you so much for tuning in today. I hope that you got a little tidbit that makes you excited to move abroad, that helps you really get motivated to make this dream a reality. So if any of you are interested in moving abroad and need some help creating your move abroad roadmap, I am here to support you in getting your journey started. So head to my website at www.yourbestlifeabroad.com for information on how to turn your dream of moving abroad into a reality. So thank you again for joining me today. I'm so excited to begin season 3. And just remember that there is no time like the present to live your best life abroad. Y'all take care.